Okay, in our next story, we're going to talk about Texas and how they're completely insane sometimes. I look at Texas and Florida, as and quite a few other states, Louisiana. Like, it's just like, man, sometimes they do ridiculous things. Even Ohio is just like, are you even in the north? Sometimes, uh, but no, seriously. So this is out of from the Huffington Post. Texas Senate bill drops teaching requirement that the Ku Klux Klan is morally wrong. A new political low in Texas. The Republican-dominated state Senate has passed a bill to eliminate a requirement that public schools teach that the KKK and its white supremacist campaign of terror are morally wrong. The cut is among some 24 curriculum requirements dropped from the new measure, along with studying Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, the works of United Farm Worker leaders Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony's writing about the women's suffrage movement, and Native American history. Critics say the state is promoting an anti-civics education. And Senate Bill 3 passed last Friday. It drops most mentions of people of color and women from the state's required curriculum. That includes eliminating a requirement that students be taught the history of white supremacy, including but not limited to the institution of slavery, the eugenics movement, and the KKK, and the ways in which it was morally wrong. So let's talk about this for a second. Texas, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this? So people can just decide what to teach our children and what not to teach our children. For one, that's part of the problem with the public school system, is that they can decide what to teach and what not to teach. They have the ability to. This isn't private school. No. If I wanted to send my kid to a religious school, I would. I'm sure a lot of other people feel like that. But to even pick and choose, what we study in American history, to just pick and choose is gross. But what they are abolishing, what they are eliminating, is even worse, because it's all things that are based on civil liberties and progressive statements. Some of these people are literally heroes, and you're missing a big part of America and the ideas that we stand for when you don't talk about this stuff. And yeah, it may get dark, and yeah, it may get uncomfortable, but that's the reality of the situation. Is that if you're going to look at America as a country, and you're going to love it, hate it, whatever, but if you're going to have a feeling for it, then you got to look at the full picture. Got to look at the full picture of America as what it is, and not just what you want it to be. Not just what you see it as, not just what your grandpa saw it as, not just what the American dream is, what it really is. You have to see it. You have to really see it. Scars and all, warts and all. You have to. You have to look at it for real. You have to take a good hard look in the mirror as an American citizen and be like, you know what? It's not all great. But that's okay, because we have to learn from the past and we have to make it better. If we don't do that, then what's the point? The measure slices out more curriculum requirements from an already restrictive Texas education law. Passed last month as part of conservatives' fear-mongering about critical race theory, a framework for studying institutional racism that is rarely taught in K-12 schools. The term critical race theory is not explicitly mentioned in either the law that passed in this current Senate bill. So Democratic, it says the new bill echoes language from last month's law that bars teachers from requiring students to develop an understanding of the 1619 Project, which calls for a far more profound examination of the significance of slavery in American history. So they don't have to learn about slavery. It also retains the language that teachers may not be compelled to discuss current events or controversial issues of public policy or social affairs, and that if they do, they can't give deference to any one perspective. So, and they bring it up here. But let's talk about that. How is it how can you give a perspective that doesn't give deference to any one perspective and talk about the Holocaust and talk about World War II and talk about the Oklahoma City bombing and talk about school shootings and talk about, like, how can you give and not give preferential treatment to what is evil and what isn't? How can you talk about the Civil War without giving deference to the North? How can you talk about the 9/11 attacks without giving deference? I just don't understand. I just don't understand it. How can you talk about anything in history without giving a perspective on it, right or wrong? That's just how history is. History, like, you can have your facts, but at the end of the day, I just don't get it. I just don't understand how you can really make the argument to say that you can pick and choose what you talk about in American history, and if you do decide to talk about anything, you have to be completely objective and neutral about it. That's not how things work.